The Premier League has been graced by some of the greatest midfielders of all time. But is Rodri the greatest of them all?
All aboard the game train.
Rodri has been one of the most dominant players we have seen over the last couple of years. Without doubt, the best midfielder in the world at this very moment, especially just after leading Spain to the European Championships while also being the leader of the City team that won the treble 2 years ago and retained the league title once again last year. He is on another level, but has he jumped into the level of greatest Premier League midfielder of all time? Let's take a look. In my mind, there is two other guys that he is competing with for that title. Before we get to them, I'll just say the guys that everyone's thinking about that I'm not going to mention here. First up, Paul Scholes. Obviously, I am a Manchester United fan, so I love Paul Scholes. Absolutely legendary playmaker, passer of the ball, but he offered very little defensively. He was a terrible tackler, but he scored important goals. He scored outrageous goals. Incredibly talented player, legendary Premier League player, but obviously not the best midfielder ever. Then Frank Lampard, the greatest goal scoring midfielder of all time. No doubt about that. 211 Premier League goals. That's an absolutely insane number. Top goal scorer in Chelsea's history. Like, wow. But unfortunately, he's just not the all rounder that belongs in the conversation for greatest midfielder of all time. But without doubt, I think Chelsea's greatest ever player, and obviously an elite player, especially in his prime. He was really unstoppable. And then the one that's gonna get people really peeved off, Steven Gerrard, arguably Liverpool's greatest ever. Although that's a very tough conversation. The legend of Hero Ball. If you think about Hero Ball stepping up in the biggest moments, scoring those goals that last in your memory forever, you think of Steven Gerrard straight away. That's where my mind goes, and I'm a Liverpool hater as a Manchester United fan. But when it comes to Hero Ball, Steven Gerrard is arguably the best ever. But he's overrated defensively, overrated as a general playmaker and passer of the ball. Yes, goals, stepping up, bleeding. Wow. I think a lot of people would have him in this argument, and I wouldn't fight that too hard. But the fact that he was never the best midfielder on the best team in the league puts him out of this conversation for me. Tell me I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Now, let's look at the guys who he is in the conversation with. First up, Patrick Vieira, Arsenal legend, captained Arsenal to an unbeaten season, three-time Premier League winner, 31 goals overall, 34 assists. Even though you would think of him as being a defensive midfield player, he played in a two-man midfield. He had to get forward as well, and he could do it well. He was great on the ball. He had all-round ability. He was in the PFA Team of the Year on 6 occasions. Very impressive. The Arsenal team was kind of built around him. He was the man who made things tick for this Arsenal team. He was the one to drive them forward and push them on. Yes, obviously he had a lot of talent around him, the likes of Henri and Bergkamp and guys of that nature. But this guy had playmaking, he had defense, he had strength, and like the battles with Roy Keane and Man United were just so iconic that helps him. I know that's not really about ability, that's just by chance they were playing against each other at the same time, but that is part of it, and that makes him even more memorable. I don't care what anyone says. The battles between those Arsenal teams and those Manchester United teams, that was the Premier League at its best when Keane and Vieira and Wenger and Ferguson were going head to head, and like these teams were really close. There was only minor little things between them most seasons when both teams were at their best and at their healthiest. But Vieira was so talented, and I see a lot of similarities between him and Rodri. Then the next guy, Roy Keane, 7 Premier League titles, great leader, captain of the very first Manchester United dynasty, 39 goals, 33 assists during his time in the Premier League. Five-time PFA Team of the Year member. The Football Writers Player of the Year and Players Player of the Year in 2000. Obviously, a huge achievement. Played 13 years with United, without doubt the greatest captain of all time. I don't think anyone's questioning that. I think you do a vote on that among fans of all clubs. I think Roy Keane wins that award. The rivalry of Vieira, like I already mentioned, like that's a huge part of it. Like those battles are the most iconic in my mind in Premier League history. And I think had he not got injured and missed the entirety of the 97-98 season, Man United would have won four Premier League titles in a row, if not maybe more, in like which City achieved that last year, winning four in a row. They're going for five in a row this year, and they're looking pretty good to get it. I think if Roy Keane's not injured 97-98, there is that chance that Man United do it first. But of course, that's just living in a dream world. That's a complete hypothetical. And maybe had they not won the league title in 97, or had they won the league title in 97-98, they wouldn't have had the ambition and the endeavor to go and win the treble in 98-99. We just don't know. But on Roy Keane, such a talented player, grew into being just that lead guy, the ultimate leader on the pitch. The way it just felt like he lifted guys up and made them feel like they could do anything. That was what Roy Keane did. That was his best quality. All these players knew that Roy Keane had their back, that he was going to lead them. He was going to pretty much be the best player on the pitch every time they went out on the pitch. He was never going to deliver a below par performance. He was going to be minimum of 7 or 8 out of 10. That was a bad day for Roy Keane. He started off in the team. He was a box to box, more of an attacker. Then he slowly dropped deeper, became a defensive midfielder who also could still attack, who could also step up and score big goals, who could also play make. He could do it all. And I think in the Premier League, he gets recognized for his greatness. Maybe in the wider world, he's not talked about enough because obviously you didn't really see him do it on the international stage as much. But in terms of like that performance in the Champions League against Juventus, that's the game that always comes back to. That's the one that my dad always brings up to me. That everything you need to know about Roy Keane, knows he's going to be suspended. The team are losing. They need him to step up, and he went and did that and put in one of the greatest performances that we have ever seen. And he did that on a regular basis in the Premier League as well. Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira, the two guys that I think are atop the list when it comes to the greatest midfielder ever. And Rodri is trying to break his way in, but has he done it? Let's take a look at him. Rodri. We really noticed his importance to Manchester City last season. He missed three of their toughest games of the year, away to Aston Villa, away to Arsenal, and an away game against Wolves. They lost all three of those games. Their record in the Premier League without Rodri is 9 wins, 1 draw, and 7 losses. And though that seems pretty kind of tame, but like for the dominance that Manchester City have, it just shows how big of an impact Rodri has on that dominance. He has been part of the team 5 years. They've won 4 Premier League titles in that time. He's got 22 goals and 21 assists. Last season, he had 8 goals and 9 assists. He was absolutely unbelievable last year. He's been in the PFA Team of the Year on 2 occasions. He is in the midst of a 50-game unbeaten streak. Saul Campbell has the longest ever unbeaten streak with 56. I think there's a good chance that Rodri eclipses that, although we haven't seen him yet this season. I'm sure when he comes back, Manchester City will be winning games. I think he should be the Ballon d'Or 2024 winner. I think you could have made the argument for him being the PFA Player of the Year as well. He is just next level. Rodri amazes me every single time that I watch him. Defensively, he's always in the right place. He's always the guy getting the toe in, getting the foot in to disrupt attacks. He's always standing in the right spot whenever a ball gets pulled back or a cross goes in. Rodri's always the guy that's there. And then he's always the guy that's setting up the attacks, the progressive passes. the goals in big moments, just the all round aura and of dominance that he has is just second to none in this league at the moment. I think he is such a level above everything else. Like I'm such a huge Declan Rice fan, but I think it's clear that Rodri is on even another level to him. And like look at like Rice is such an excellent player as well, but Rodri just has that next level to him. His dominance cannot be understated. Like his stats from last year were absolutely insane. That was the year, the last kind of 2, 3 years is when he's really taken off as just being that unstoppable force in midfield. And when he's playing, you expect Manchester City to win. I mean, like you expect him to win even without him, but the stats show that without him, they're beatable. With him, they're kind of as close to unbeatable as arguably we have seen in the Premier League. All that to say, I still don't think I would call him the greatest Premier League midfielder of all time. I think maybe he has eclipsed Vieira. Just, I would be interested to hear from some guys that I think you can make the argument that he's not even there yet either. I think you could still say Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira, then Rodri as the three greatest midfielders the Premier League has ever seen. But Rodri also, I think, has the potential to be dominant for the next 4, 5, maybe even 6 years. He's only 28, which seems crazy. If he stays at Man City in that time and they continue their domination in the league, he could finish with more league titles than Keane and Vieira combined. He could continue to rack up goals and assists. He could continue to be one of the best players in the league, continue to win individual awards. I think when it's all said and done, there is a good chance that Rodri is the unequivocal greatest Premier League midfielder of all time. But for right now, that crown still belongs to Manchester United's captain, leader, legend, Roy Keane. And for all of you out there that are wondering why I'm not talking about the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, David Silva, Bruno Fernandes, people of that nature, because when I talk midfielder, I'm talking the guys that do it all, that can attack, can defend, can play make, can fit into any situation, any sort of midfield. They could dominate in a 2-man midfield. They could dominate in a 3-man midfield. They could do it all. That's what I expect from my midfielders. I don't know about you, but that's my opinion. When I think midfielder, I don't think of like a Fernandez or a De Bruyne or like a Foden or anything like that. They're not midfielders for me. I feel like there's a big difference between a midfielder and like an attacking midfielder slash forward. I think there's different levels to this game. The best midfielders are some of the greatest players of all time. Like you think of the Zidanes of the world and guys of that nature. Those are proper midfield players, and that's what I think Rodri, Keane, Vieira are. There is more that you could argue there, but I think those guys are the top three, especially with their aura. Aura is a big thing, and they all have it. They all have that nature about them that makes everyone else feel more comfortable. That makes everyone else believe that okay, this guy's playing. Okay, yeah, we're gonna be fine. They've all got that, and that's what sets them apart from other guys. They're all the leaders of their respective teams. Obviously, Keane and Vieira are long retired, but at their best, they were everything that Rodri is to Manchester City right now. So, for me, end it here. Roy Keane, still the greatest Premier League midfielder of all time. I think Rodri might just be behind him, just ahead of Vieira. I could understand the arguments if you still think Vieira is ahead of him. But I will say, by the time it's all said and done, by the time Rodri hangs up his boots, if he stays in Manchester City for the rest of his career, I think there's a very good chance he will be considered the unanimous, unequivocal greatest Premier League midfielder of all time.